Hi, this is Phil, and I'm here to tell you all about the Capes and Lunatics Patreon. Get early access to all of our interviews, including the monthly Chichester Chats with writer and comic book legend DG Chichester, new episodes of classic Capes and Lunatics shows, including The Quantum Zone, This, That, or the Third, and many, many more specials, all completely uncensored. Access starts for $3 a month, full video when you pledge $5 a month. Check out the link in our show notes or go to patreon.com/CapesandLunatics. Hope to see you there.
This is DG Chichester, and you're listening to the Capes and Lunatics podcast.
All right, everyone. Welcome back. It's that time again. Time for another Chichester Chats. It's me, Phil. Lilith is here. And of course, Mr. DG Chichester, because of course it is Chichester Chats. Hello, sir.
Good morning, guys. I think the intro gets more elaborate, and now we got like Fury Road, sort of music, and it's great. It wakes me up on a Saturday morning. So
that make me rebrand DG Chichester Fury Red.
Yeah, I'll go for a new Furiosa before I'll push for that.
All right, so yeah, we're back. This time we're going to talk. The story you did you and Margaret did in
yes,
Solo Avengers number 10 featuring Doctor Druid. So okay, that was, again, you probably know what my first question is going to be. Did you and Margaret pick Doctor Druid, or did Marvel give you the assignment of saying, hey, we need a Doctor Druid story?
No, this was very, very early on, trying to break into writing altogether, and so we weren't certainly in demand. I don't even know if we had done the Shadowline stuff at that point. I don't think we had. So I think this was very which would end up being a considerable body of work, and wouldn't necessarily make an impression on the Marvel editors, but certainly gave us a lot of I think increased skills under our belts and keyboards and whatever. But so this was I think some of the very first stuff we had written together, and that we were trying to sell. We were trying to break in. There'd be an inventory issue on this, and just knocking on doors in editors' offices. And Mark Grunwald creating Solo Avengers was, we thought, an opportunity to do something. A shorter story would be less onus on an editor to take a chance on a very untested writer. They didn't really look at you as a team of writers. You were a writer. You're splitting the fee and everything else. So you're one entity essentially. We figured, okay, everybody's going to go for more name value characters, but Mark, in creating the book, our impression was that he wanted to both give a spotlight to talent and help talent along the way, but also give a spotlight to Avengers who weren't ordinarily used. So we had the really good version of the Marvel Universe Handbook. The latter one would be sort of like a one sheet of character poses and a very short write-up. The original version of the Marvel Universe Handbook had extraordinarily detailed, wonderful write-ups of pretty much every character and every piece of technology, and they were wonderful. They'd really kind of go into the history of characters. So we spent a fair amount of time, I remember, going through those and trying to figure out, okay, which character is interesting and probably unused that we could do a pitch around. So we thought Druid was interesting in both those ways, and it turned out to work out well. Although he's a very oddball character when you think about him.
Oh yeah, especially with
now Lee's here too. So was this like a whole package deal, or is this how you guys got met? Or
no, this Lee was assigned to it afterwards. We would have sold the story and then worked with Mark, and we could talk about that some. But Lee would then be assigned by Mark's office. I think it was run out of Mark's office. So that was a choice at that point. Yeah, and I didn't know Lee really at all at that point. I think, you know, knew of him, but didn't know him. So this would have been the first time we would work together. And you know, at some point or another, Margaret, and this is Margaret Clark, who I co-wrote, you know, many things with early on. You know, at some point she, you know, tagged him Dr. Dopey, and that would stick with Lee for, you know, forever, you know, to this day. If that story ever comes up, I think that's the first words out of his mouth.
I like that. So was this story kind of like that West Coast Avengers? So I mean, that one was more like a you know, do the story and then they'll slot it in when they need something. Was that kind of Solo Avengers where everyone was writing like a short Avengers story and they're like, okay, next we'll grab yours, then we'll grab yours, then we'll grab yours, or were they just like, we need a story for an issue 10?
No, there was the West Coast Avengers story, yes, was written as an inventory issue. So we had pitched an idea, you know, we weren't the regular team. We pitched a story idea, and that was specifically for, you know, it's an editor's safety valve.
Yeah.
The regular book goes off schedule, an inventory issue is finished, it's waiting in the drawer, and it's ready to go when the regular schedule is blown. So that story may never have run. And some people would say it never should have run. Although it's greatly amusing, and as we know from the cover copy, it is their greatest battle ever.
It is.
But Solo Avengers, while it you know, would have different people, you know, working on those different Solo Avengers stories, were assigned. You know, so you know, that story was pitched to be part of the book, and Mark, in buying it, you know, didn't buy it as, well, okay, we'll buy it as an inventory issue. It was bought to be featured in the book at some point. I don't think when we sold it, we knew specifically it was going to be issue number 10, but it wasn't, you know, purchased and worked with and approved to kind of, well, maybe it'll run if all the real writers and, you know, don't have a story that runs. You know, you will be part of the regular queue, and then they would look at, you know, their schedule and probably, you know, balance things out. If the month before and the month after, maybe they had a more popular Solo Avenger, a more well-known one, that it would make sense to bookend or put Doctor Druid, a less known character, in between those. You know, if they had a magic character like Druid one month, maybe they didn't have a magic character the next month. You know, those would be the editorial decisions you would think about. But we knew when Mark bought it that it would be part of the featured lineup so long as the book continued.
Oh man, you could talk Mark Grunold to me all day. I love the Mark Grunold.
Oh yeah,
stuff
Mark was fabulous.
I would love to do like some kind of tribute episode at some point, just to get you and whoever else to just tell that, because again, that would have been my number one. I'm like, I wish I would have, you know, well, would have been able to talk to Mark Grunold, because
No,
just
Mark
all the stories I hear, just, you know, sound like, you know, and again, he seemed like he loved his job. You know, just
he did. I mean, he loved the characters. He loved the universe. He loved the people he worked with. You know, he loved the fun of it. And some people, you know, will say that's what ultimately kind of killed him, was, you know, when Marvel became very corporate and we were under a lot of, you know, pressure, and there was pressure to, you know, have layoffs and all this kind of stuff. It you know, it was so much pressure and tension on him. Now that's anecdotal observation. That's not, you know, real fact. But I was always intimidated by Mark, even though he was because, you know, he could be a very, from the outside, if you know him, you know, he could be a very kind of inscrutable character. So I didn't have a very close relationship with him. And then I was also very, you know, insecure about what I was trying to do, which is one of the reasons of, you know, teaming up with Margaret Clark to try to overcome things from, you know, both sides. You know, she was having a hard time kind of breaking in as a woman, you know, to some extent, and I was having a hard time trying to kind of position myself because I was just insecure. But Mark, you know, taught me a lot about interacting with people and interacting with, I think, creative people, because he purchased the story, but he told us it needed work. It wasn't just, okay, it's great, go. And he spent, to my mind, an inordinate amount of time working with the two of us to improve that story, taking us through, I can't remember if he did it before he bought it, or made us make the changes first. Probably that would put him in the case. He probably said, all right, there's something here, I want to do this, but you guys have to make this work. But at the same time, he spent a good amount of time sitting with us, not just some notes or 3 words or here's a sentence and go figure it out, going through what worked and what didn't work, more importantly, and ideas, not defined thing, or do this and make this panel and make that panel. There was enough detail that you would then have to work it out on your own, and he did it in a very creatively focused way. And I can't remember, at this juncture exactly what those points were, but I would then take that for myself when I would do creative feedback for people years later, both as an editor and even working in advertising. I credit that kind of experience with with how I wanted to approach people with creative feedback.
Again, I love to hear that stuff, and that they're. It's always great to hear good stories of good people in the industry.
Oh yeah, and there's a tremendous amount of good people in the industry. There's no. I mean, then certainly, there's no shortage.
Mm-hmm. And was the choice made for Doctor Druid because you love? Because I mean, you seem to love the supernatural stuff, so it's just like,
I think it was, like I said a moment ago. I mean, certainly, I think that probably influenced it, but we were trying to be strategic. Doing a Captain America story, doing an Iron Man story. Probably a lot of people were doing. Those were A-listers, right? That's not what Mark was looking to profile in the book. He was looking to kind of not dredge the bottom, but there's tons of Avengers over the years.
And those guys have their own monthly. Those guys have their own monthly book.
Exactly. So who are you going to feature here, and who are you going to feature that maybe you can put an interesting spin on that somebody else isn't going to bring, and who are you going to feature that nobody else is going to bring forward necessarily, and then Mark might be intrigued because well, yes, I want to feature unknown Avengers, and these guys pulled this guy out of the Druid closet, the old forest wood closet. And so that was it. As I said, we kind of went through those Marvel Universe handbooks, reading, entries. What about this guy? What about this guy? We spent a long time, trying to figure out, okay, who to use. And he became intriguing, right? Because he was, the Druid aspect of it was interesting. This character who was sort of obsessed with knowledge of the occult, and that was almost this academic way of doing it. That became a kind of an intriguing twist on things. We thought, but as a character, he's this portly, middle-aged, rotundish figure, and it's sort of undefined-ish powers, Celtic, whatevers. And so he's certainly not as sexy or Ditko-esque as Doctor Strange when it comes to the occult. But I think it was a combination of, that's kind of intriguing from a supernatural point of view. But I feel in my head and heart we picked him because we thought it might get Mark's attention. That was the onus of the book. The intent of the book, was Hawkeye would get a profile, place, because Hawkeye was close to Mark's heart, and then the backup story or the secondary story would be Avengers who weren't, who didn't usually get a spotlight. here's a chance for them to kind of come out and maybe make an impression. And also it was a little bit of a talent farm. It was also a chance for Mark to work with people who didn't have standing yet, not total unknowns. You know, it wasn't a tryout book.
Yeah.
But it was a chance to kind of give somebody an 11-page swipe at a story, which is not too much of a commitment on Marvel's part, but also is, I would think, an unspoken challenge from an editor to a creative team, because, you know, people are always saying, I need more pages. And if you can tell a story in a shorter amount of pages and have it work, then you're really onto something, right? You can focus your skills and story beats and so forth and make things work.
And again, could that, I mean, is it almost like a tryout for a character too? Like, say they got bombarded with like letters about this story where they've been like, oh, we need like a Doctor Druid miniseries or something.
Sure. Yeah. Today it would be lots of hashtags, you know, Doctor, Druid, more Druid, please, but yeah, obviously if there was a really effective story and it made a huge swing at the fence, it would, would open doors for a character. I mean, I think it opened doors for us in the sense that there was a bit more acknowledgement, that we were working, within the sandbox. There was, there was not suddenly a range of offers, but you could then have a published story within the Marvel work that we could then take to other editors and say, oh, we did this and Mark was happy with it, and maybe pay a little bit more attention to us pitching you this story.
So looking back at this story, is there anything that you would change or anything that stuck out to you? Like, hey, that's a dang good idea. I'm glad I did that. Because I know you like to, self-flagellation over your writing. So I'll indulge you this one time.
Thank you, Lilith. Thank you. It's the most entertaining part of the show. I mean, I'd probably change 1,000 things. I mean, but it's a very early effort, right? And so I could see that, that sort of struggle to make things work, both as co-writers and, sort of finding a shared language. The title doesn't age well at all, right? We probably thought we were so clever. Token sacrifice, and because subways were tokens, at that point to get on them. So that means nothing to anybody nowadays. It's like, and MetroCard, sacrifice wouldn't have the same like play. So, but at that point in time, it just felt like, oh, of course, subways will always be run on tokens. I think it's a solid story. It has that it states the intention of the character very well, right? I'm in search of the unknown. I am always on a quest for knowledge. There's no question what this guy is about. I think, and I'm sure that was Mark's influence, to make sure that we indicated that, and that became sort of this good through line for him. But it's a story that doesn't really certainly advance much for him, and would it really anyway, right? An 11-page story where we don't own the character. But I think it's kind of solid. I don't know what we were thinking with Stonecutter's pigged in English thing, which was almost impossible to read. Like, I don't know why she was doing this fractured like syntax speaking thing. Was it because she couldn't speak English, or because she was actually ancient but looked young and we were trying to indicate something there? I thought that was a little awkward. I probably improve on that. I would have liked to have, if I could do it over again, and maybe we do a little bit of a nod to the earth magic, and there's some mentions of it, but I think playing that up a little bit more to sort of, because we did do, as we would always do this, as a team. We were both sort of detail nerds, and we would always do a fair amount of research of things, so once we sort of settled on Druid, and I'm sure when we did the initial pitch, and then certainly once we went to write the actual plot, we did as much research as you could without, investing yourself in the strange literature wing of the New York City Public Library, on Druidism, and Druid magic and Celtic, history, and try to find some little bits and pieces that we could sort of, play out there where it wouldn't just be, cliche city. Like some of that's a little cliche city with the, the subway, the subway's doing a kind of a faux Stonehenge thing or whatever. But I think, I think it's a kind of a solid story, and it's got that little twist at the end. Sorry guys, spoiler alert, 35 years later, where Stonecutter is actually ancient, and a druid breaking the spell, makes her, rapidly age. I think it's interesting to me, to sort of like see some aspects of things that I feel have always been kind of important to my representation of these kind of characters and heroes, where, Druid does this kind of not self-sacrifice thing, but the positioning of himself to rescue the victim at the end, and let the bad guy kind of get away. That theme, I think, has played out many times, like over the years, for me, where the hero makes that choice. That's the important thing in the moment, not defeating the villain. It's saving the victim.
Mm-hmm.
But it's I think I've been harsher on things that people like more or know more than I'm harsh on this. It just feels very, it feels very early to me. It feels very like you're kind of getting on the bicycle, like for the first time, which it may very well have been in a way, and it's like the choices of the captions and the segues are very like writing an academic paper, for the first time. I have to do my intro, and then I have to state my thesis, and then I have to present my evidence, and then I have to like restate my thesis. It's, I don't know. That's how I kind of came away from rereading it.
Well,
What did you guys think of it?
I mean, I liked it, but I mean, just from what you were saying, do you think were you influenced by the business too? Because I think the business, I mean, again, you had people were trying to do different things at this point still, but
Mm-hmm.
do you think, I mean, I'd say the majority of the industry, they were probably, I mean, it was more formulaic where it's like, you have to do it this way. So you think you were influenced by that, where the majority of the industry was like, okay, well, you have to do this. You have to have the, the text has to be this way, and you have to have the word bubbles, and just the captions
Word balloons,
like this,
word
and
balloons.
yeah.
Always balloons, never bubbles. No, I mean, certainly there are conventions, that we knew from comics, and that's the way you write a comic. That's the way you create, a comic story. I don't mean that so much. It's just kind of, again, the best example that comes to my mind, this morning is when you write a term paper for school or something, right? And when you first start out, you follow the instructions of how you're supposed to do it. By the time you write something now, years later, when you're much more comfortable with doing something, you just say fuck it, and you put your own voice like into it, and you kind of roll with it a little more. So it just feels a little like over structured to me, not in a bad way. Like I didn't read any of it and sort of cringe, a little bit like on the as I said, the kind of the broken English of Stonecutter, but it's got a little bit of character play, between him and his agent, so where are you going? You're on Letterman tonight, and it's and he's like, I must always quest for knowledge,
do you think this story is more of like similar to a Grunwald and Mark story, because since you and Margaret were so new to the business, you were relying more on Mark's notes and stuff and suggestions?
It's hard to remember that, but no, I didn't feel like Mark's thumb was like heavy on the scale. There were editors who would, we shall not name them, who would do that, right? They would try to morph every story into their story. Mark was not that way. Mark spent, like I said, a lot of time with us, but it was about the things that would make it a better story. And, these are the things that do not work, and here is why. And then these are the things that it needs to do to accomplish, a good story structure, a good Marvel story structure, what it needs to serve the character. I mean, I can't remember all those specifics, but they would have come through in the story, or Mark would not have, purchased it and run it. But it was sort of like, here, I'm spending the time with you. I'm explaining to you what needs to be done, but I'm not explaining it to you to, again, say, page 1, you need to have 4 panels, and these 4 panels need to do this and this and this and this. Now on page 2, it needs to have 7 panels, and it needs to do this and this and this. He gave us all the tools and the direction, and then said, okay, go make this your own. So I felt like it was our story, and I do feel like it was our story. I can sort of read it and say, okay, I can understand how we arrived at those choices, and the way we would work back and forth on ideas, and then the way we would work back and forth on script and trading ideas and lines and those sort of things. So I can sort of see that happening. So I feel it's our story.
Mhm.
I just feel like, again, we were very early in our process, and by that it feels, it just feels like a little training wheels, to me. Like, we're not quite, off and on our own yet in the same way that we would be later on.
I feel like I need behind the scenes recordings of you actually reading these again for the first time in years. I just need to hear, what was this kid doing? I don't know.
Oh, there's a lot of that, It's like, what's going on with this? What does that mean? Like I said, the dialogue of Stonecutter was weird. The look of Stonecutter was weird. I don't know how much influence we had or how much description we had. And, I love Lee to death, but that gothy biker, like half nakedy costume of hers, I'm not sure what it's supposed to represent. Like, I maybe we didn't give him something, or maybe he didn't work it out. I would have thought like a sexy, like Celtic, magic-y costume would have made more sense. And she's called Stonecutter, but we never have her like cut any stones. Like, obviously it's supposed to be some kind of allusion to like a Stonehenge, cutting of the stones thing, but that never really plays out, does it? It doesn't really.
I mean, you had 11 pages. I mean,
yeah, but then we could have had her, maybe the subway cars she'd stolen were slotted into stones, and just a reference to something, just because otherwise the name means nothing. Which it should have meant something, right? It was obviously meant to be a throwback to those Stonehenge-like structures, and the earth aspects of the druid or druid magic or something, but there's nothing there. There's nothing there in her look, in a line. That's kind of weird to me, but
I enjoyed the interaction between the victim and Dr. Druid. I like that. He's like, but you let her get away. He's like, no, more important things.
Yeah, that's yeah. I mean, that feels good and right, and again, his quest for knowledge. I must always pursue the next level of learning, and whatever. But he's just a weird character. I don't like. I think you could do, and maybe people have used him in different places. I think he could be like a kind of a cool character to visit, right? If you were doing a magic book, of some kind, and
well,
you
his
needed
original iteration, Dr. Droom, that's Doom with an R, is actually kind of fascinating to me. And then like the retwisting of him into Dr. Druid. So yeah,
right.
no, super interesting character. Fun.
Yeah, but it could be fun to play. I mean, certainly there's a ton of stuff you could do with, druid lore and such. And
The
and
girlies
not get
will
too
love it
lost
now
in the
because it's really deeply tied into astrology and stuff too, and that
Yeah.
has made a resurgence. So
Yeah, I mean, again, he's not your typical hero. He's not the square jawed. At least
No.
visually, he's not your typical hero. And yeah, I mean, it depends who's writing it, because stories like this. Again, I like this story. You show how he's I want to say original, but what sets him apart. Because it just seems like some writers who would write him would be like, oh, well, he's kind of the Doctor Strange backup. If you can't get Doctor Strange on the phone, then you go to Doctor Druid.
Yeah, and I think that would have been something we thought about, and again, that quest for knowledge. I don't actually have, I think the Marvel handbooks anymore, but which is a curse on me. But I think that kind of came out, and I think that's why we kept reinforcing that, and that's what made him feel different than Strange. Not that Strange wasn't in quest of knowledge, but Strange is the sorcerer supreme. He's here to protect the realm, and so forth. Druid, will do that, but his always on that occult, understanding the occult is its own thing. I think one of the things that jumped out to me in reading it, though, which I don't know how intentional we were, but I kind of liked it, was just that feeling of, oh, shit just happens in New York City with these guys. The fact he's just in the middle of the subway, and he's riding the subway with his agent, and then it's like, no, I got to go take care of this, and everybody just sort of accepts it, like, around him. His agent's like, what are you doing now? You're doing this now, and you're at Letterman in an hour. It's and everybody else is like, kind of, dude, get out of the way. I got to get to the closing doors, on the subway. It's just this kind of natural flow of like, I gotta go be a superhero. I gotta go get like a Bialy, at the at the bodega. I like that. Again, I don't think we were totally conscious of doing it, but I think that's one of the fun naturalistic things of playing with that type of universe and that type of Marvel universe, especially with these secondary characters, right? It's another super freak. What's this one all about? He's not Strange or whatever else, but he's somebody. He's got cloaks and costumes, and off he goes.
I mean, yeah, you always got to figure at this point in the Marvel universe, people have seen everything. It's like, oh, why were you late for work? Oh, the subway was delayed. Some guy was doing magic down there.
Yeah, right. Exactly. My train vanished into a portal, a Celtic portal somewhere.
I know. That's the other thing. Yeah, he was with his agent. They were on their way to Letterman because he had a book coming out.
Yeah, he had a book coming out, like book on occult books don't sell as well as they used to, and you've got to you got to hype it, so that's that. I could see Mark influencing that a little bit too, but I'm not sure. But because that's sort of like the reality of Marvel, right? That's the fun thing. These guys have crossovers.
Spider-Man can do it. Anybody can do it.
Right,
out
right.
Records and photo book. You got to make a living.
Yeah,
New York's expensive.
Exactly. And here's this guy struggling with it. He's got command of the most ancient of magics, but he's having a hard time getting his book sold.
Only because he's ethical. See.
Yes, exactly.
Otherwise, you just cast a spell and say, "Buy my book."
Right. Could have gotten on TV and spun a spell and hypnotized many children. Go take the money out of your parents' wallets.
I mean, I feel like somebody could, if someone would do something with that now, it'd be like, oh, Doctor Strange has, or Doctor Druid has his own reality show or something, or some self-help program or something. Or...
Oh, sure, right, yeah, it could be the
they go to him to quit smoking.
Yeah, lose weight. Yeah.
Right.
No, but I liked it. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the use of the character for sure.
Yeah, he could be a Dr. Phil sort of guy, except with ethics, and like.
Now that's a road too far.
What's this? You try to attempt a love spell? No, that was gonna backfire. No.
That's right. How's that working out for you? It's yeah, I think there's. I mean, he certainly didn't strike me as a headliner then. He doesn't strike me as a headliner now. But he strikes me as kind of an interesting addition, to the
But does that
Marvel
make it easier?
world. It
Like where you
certainly
don't
made it
have that
easier.
pressure? Of a
Well, it
headline?
did then. It definitely did then. And again, I'm 80% certain that's what got Mark's attention. Like, and that was strategic. Again, we would think strategically. You guys have asked, before, why did you feature that character? A lot of people are always surprised, like, why would you put a character like Ghost Rider in a story like this? Because we wanted to sell books. Like, what are you like?
It's like marketing. Marketing.
Why are we having this conversation? You got me for an hour and you're asking me questions. Why would you put the Punisher in the story? Because the Punisher's popular. We were trying to sell the book. Like, but I think that was. I think that intrigued Mark, right? You didn't go for the obvious. You didn't say, "Oh, let's make it Black Knight," or like, you did a little work, and you pulled out a character from the closet, and you gave him some love and attention within the realm of your abilities, right? You guys put some work in here, and I think that. I feel that's what got his attention, right? You took the assignment seriously that I wanted to do, that I wanted to profile these types of characters. And if there aren't, I don't know, like off the top of my head, what other characters within Marvel play within, again, that druid history, but probably not a lot, so again, if there was a magic story or if I was to have done a chapter in the Inferno type, one of the many magic crossovers within Marvel where evil magic has overcome the world, or if I was less worried about Blade grimacing all the time in Night Stalkers, maybe they would have visited him to get like faced a Celtic, villain of some kind. In Night Stalkers, there was this gargoyle character who I think also had a stone name, Stone Cold. So maybe he was related to Stonecutter, but he was actually made of stone. So that would have made more sense. But maybe that would have been a kind of a cool thing to kind of not do a team up. We didn't. Night Stalkers team up with Doctor Druid. This issue, the team up you've been looking for. The team up nobody asked for. But that could be the sort of thing. You are delving deep into unknown territory, and use this rune if you run into trouble, like that kind of thing. You could have played like a Q sort of role from James Bond, and given them the unholy rune to use at the last moment. So that would have been maybe an interesting way to play things out by looking more into the interconnectivity of Marvel's magic.
Did you ever think about using this character again?
No, I didn't. Which is like, I think one of my many. However, I only have 2 feet, but many Achilles heels. That's right. That's sort of like one of my failings of like, oh, look, I use this and introduce this, and then I didn't go back to it. Now, he wasn't my main character, so it wasn't like something I needed to kind of necessarily, do with him. But in retrospect and kind of talking about it now, that would have been, why not? Like, why not use him in Night Stalkers? Why not use him somewhere?
Well, as we've learned, it's never too late.
As we've learned, yes, there is that. I will now reveal it for the first time. The Doctor Druid Black Armor series is coming out, so we're Daredevil loans him.
Oh no, Doctor Druid purple cloak. Yeah,
there you go. Yes. The soundboard is always available.
Yes. Yeah, it was so weird with Doctor Druid in this time, because I think not too long after this story, like they had him like kind of go nuts and betray the Avengers. Then he kind of disappeared for a while. He was
Oh, they did use him again? Did they
yeah,
really? Oh.
I think he was in the Avengers at this time. This might have been towards the end, but then like I think it was
Uh-huh.
the mid '90s. They kind of brought him back and de-aged him. Like he had a full head of hair. He had, of course, the '90s.
Everybody got de-aged.
The '90s ponytail. Yeah.
Okay. So he
Yeah.
sort of became like what, the silver guy from Cobra Kai, like
I mean, maybe you influenced Mark because he did use him in a Captain America arc. The one where Captain America turned into a werewolf. But yeah, I mean, Mark used them in a Captain
Oh,
America.
good.
Arc,
I didn't
Yeah.
realize that.
So maybe,
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's a useful character, and I'm going to say with no information whatsoever that kind of use sounds more interesting to me, the werewolf
yeah,
storyline, than just because I think there's a trope of let's take a marginal character and make him the evil or
yeah.
the character who turns everything bad, right? He makes a massive mistake, or he turns to evil because he hasn't been getting the love and attention of the rest of the Avengers. That to me, I've never liked those type of stories. That just feels like the kind of like cheap, easy pass. But using him for werewolf magic or transformative animal magic would probably fit within, right, again, that zone of loosely constructed druid earth magic, natural magic, as it were.
So yeah, kids, yes, DG Chichester influenced Mark Grunwald to use Doctor Druid. So you wouldn't have Man and Wolf if it wasn't for DG Chichester.
Mark never mentioned it, but who knows? Certainly it could have been like the sense of like, oh yeah, there's that character. I mean, not that Mark needed any reminders of.
I mean, that's literally why they put him in charge of the official handbook.
Yeah, no, exactly. The Mark didn't need reminders of who existed, but maybe it I don't, timing wise, maybe it was like, oh yeah, maybe I need a trick for that. Maybe that was a little reminder to pull that out. But
there are a ton of characters in Marvel that go underused, underserved, especially in the magic realm. So
yeah,
it's always nice to see.
It's
always nice to see an underutilized character, honestly.
And again, I could see this story, appealing the Mark, because I think he was that guy. Like you said, he loved the history of Marvel, and he loved playing with like lesser known characters. Or it's like, oh, hey, we haven't seen this guy in 10 years. Let's bring,
Yep.
He loved that stuff. Yeah.
Yep. And that was literally the mandate of the book. The book was to profile or put a spotlight on Solo Avengers, right? Underused characters, and to a lesser extent, a tryout ground for talent, or to help talent along, right? Low risk, chance for Marvel to try out people and give them a chance to actually do stuff and learn by doing. So it wasn't. I don't think it was the sort of book that would ever have had like an open submission, and I'm sure it was hit by every creative working to sort of like, I can pick up another 11 pages of work, I'll do that. But my impression, again, and certainly our experience, was Mark was more receptive, because I think we gave it some original spin, and he recognized that we were trying to kind of find a foothold and get some momentum for ourselves as a creative team, and it certainly helped. It helped validate us to us, if nobody else, right? That, like, here's a story. This wasn't just a bullshit, Thundercats story that was like, just written with pieces from the, the cartoon Bible, or, a frothy, nothing of a story. I mean, it is a kind of a nothing of a story, but to me, again, Mark's time spent working with us to make it better, felt like, oh, well, there must be something going on here for Mark Grunwald to pay attention to what we're doing. and to spend the time to give us back some very salient, feedback, which we could then act on. And then the fact that he then bought the story and ran the story means we did act on it. We did learn from it, and then hopefully carry that forward into the stuff that would come next.
And again, speaking of being influenced by stories, again, they're two completely different stories. This is more magic and supernatural. The other one is very grounded. Did this Subway story have any influence on Daredevil 316?
The Subway's
Yeah.
story in
Yeah.
that one,
Yeah. Even if it's just
I think
the actor, you're like, I have more
He
to say
just
about
loves Subways.
I just have more to say about the New York subway system.
Yeah, I mean, you lived. Yeah, I mean, I lived in New York City. I mean, you read the subway every day. You saw that every day. I mean, the subway was, and you're waiting for the subway every day. And I lived in Greenpoint, Brooklyn for most of the time. Before Greenpoint was fashionable, and the L train. If you hit it right, you were in Greenpoint in 15 minutes. If you didn't hit it right, you were on that platform for hours. So you absorbed a lot of story points from that. So I'm
the
sure
best people watching place, honestly.
Yeah, and the mumbling, like speaker, at the beginning, is
Gotta learn to
certainly,
speak conductor.
Yeah, you got to learn to speak conductor, right? So I think anything that took place in the subway with either Druid or Daredevil or anything else, was certainly influenced by the time of being there. I was not the most interconnected person to New York City of all time, but I certainly feel that the time that I did live in the city gave me more a better feel, for what it was like to sort of be in the city and feel the impressions of neighborhoods and environments, and in the case of Daredevil, sensory, type things, and the smells and stinks and pressures and humidities and whatever, that I could use when I would write those stories. But but the subway was, an interesting place to be.
So would you say that's like a good tool that like writers should like try to hone? It's like wherever you go, especially if it's like a bustling place with a lot of people, just like let stuff sink into your subconscious. So
Oh yes.
At some day, like, it could be 5 years from now, it just pops out of your subconscious.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that thing.
I mean, yeah, no, totally. I mean, and now you've got the gift of things like Atlas Obscura, and such, which will tell you, here's the quirky semi-safe alley to go down, here's the weird, museum, or here's, the strange artifact on the edge of the city or whatever. And you should always do that. I mean, you're going to take in something more from that than you're ever going to get from a book or a video, or oh, hey, I'm doing a walking tour of whatever, watch my video on YouTube. That's not really going to create it for you, right? You're not going to get that sense of either things are on top of each other, or there's a more grandiose spectacle to something, or maybe it's a lot smaller and more confined, but or just the voices, Lilith, what you're saying, it's like the subway being sort of like a living storybook, right? You can go to locations as a creative person, as a writer, and you should just sit there, right? Bring yourself a thermos or coffee, and just sit and just listen, right? People watch, and things will happen, and you'll pick up lines of dialogue, and you'll pick up you'll watch people even just and sort of like make up dialogues in your head. What are they saying to each other? They look like they're really angry with each other. What are they angry about? And you get a great sense that you can't possibly get from from anything except being there. And you're not going to move maybe to Boston or San Francisco or Amsterdam for 6 months at a time. Maybe that would be nice, but you can spend a long afternoon like in some of these places and just take it in, as opposed to just, I need to go to the museum and I need to do this, and now I need to go to the cafe. So soaking it up and capturing it in the moment, not just like, writing down those impressions, are things then you can come back to.
So that's literally what you have Daredevil doing in 304, right? He's just like people watching the whole time.
304 is everything. 304 is entirely based. I think I've said this before. 304 is all things that I either witnessed directly or that were featured stories in New York Newsday. Every single one of those things, and most of them are things I saw directly. The guys playing tennis across the street, was,
Yeah.
was it? That was the whole incident at the end. Where the cop mistakes the kids making the film. That happened to me and my filmmaking friends. We almost got shot. So like, the people juggling torches, everything, in there is all just incidents. The thing where the subway grabbed the baby carriage and started dragging it down the platform. That was an actual incident that happened. The number of times I saw people steal cabs from somebody else.
Oh yeah.
That's that was constant. So that's but that was that's why you capture those moments, because none of those moments was a story, right? But it's like, oh, that's cool, that's cool,
It was
that's
just
cool.
like a
And
love letter to a day in the life in New York, and it was just so
but
great.
but right, but you could never, but it didn't become anything until there was that Newsday story that was like, we have just gone through 34 hours without a single murder in New York City, which is so rare, like that it required a headline or whatever. And that's what then that's just what sparked for me, like there's 34 hours without a murder. So murder being the worst of the worst, what does Daredevil do with those 34 hours? Does he kick back and like, braille up the legal review? Does he hit on Karen? Or does he say, I've got 34 hours to kind of go all in on everything that I can't do when, the murderers of Hell's Kitchen in New York are ripping the city and people apart. Not that every Daredevil story is a murder story, but like if that's the worst that's going on, then maybe he can be there for everybody else. And that's just sort of like, what, I wonder if this works. And it did. And then of course Ron, Garney gets on it, and it becomes, kind of magical in a way.
Yeah.
I love that story. But that's why you collect those moments, right? That's why you collect them, because you don't know what they're going to turn into.
Yeah. Again, yeah. So like you can't sit in a bubble your whole life, or I mean, it's your writing's not going to have that that flavor and stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
And even to bring it back to our boy Druid, the subway's a creepy place, right? Like going through these tunnels, and you go in the dark,
you're
underground,
underground.
you're
under
underground.
the city, the other city. It's
exactly.
really fascinating. The New York subway system, honestly.
Right. And the story doesn't play that up, except maybe as like, one mention of, night and darkness or something like that. But, but that sense of like the tunnels, right?
It is a magical portal when you think about it. All the literal blood, sweat, and tears that went into that system, and it takes you from one place to another.
Exactly. You go
a better quote unquote place from another place. Coney Island being at the end of the line is like a whole thing too.
Yeah. I mean, you journey into darkness and you emerge into light, somewhere else. That would probably been another way of writing any one of Druid's many, purple prose captions. But but I mean, that's sort of like that experience of actually riding the subway and feeling that, I think is at least sprinkled throughout, aspects of that. It's not the main thrust of the story, but you again, you experience it. And Margaret being, in the city as well, she had the same quality of experience. So, we're able to sync up, well in agreeing on ideas and then how to represent that.
Yeah, I would love to pick your brain about working as a writing team. Not today, but another episode, because I find that fascinating how people figure out like the ebb and flow and who does dialogue description, like how that just comes about. I find it really fascinating that people can do that, because I hate people outside of Phil for the most part. So
Yeah, it's
Wow, that's
tough.
the greatest compliment I've never had.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, pick another, one of her, the stories I worked on with her, and like we can use that as the thrust. I mean, I can't remember, every instance of that, but I can
is
remember
there a
in
story that
essence the
sticks out
experience.
that it just clicked, like a story where you guys just kind of click, like it just came out of nowhere? And maybe we can cover that. I think we might have covered one of those already.
I mean,
When
I
you
think that.
mentioned it.
Well, that West Coast Avengers was one
Yeah.
what you guys both worked on, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, we worked on West Coast Avengers, worked on Justice, we worked on this, we worked on, all the Shadowline books, all the Doctor Zero, St. George, Powerline, then the Critical Mass series that followed that, and then the Punisher, Captain America, Blood and Glory, thing I think was, and then there was a Thundercats.
Okay, Thundercats it
Yeah.
is.
But no, Thundercats never ran. Thundercats was a
Well,
was a
you don't know how resourceful I am.
Oh
no,
my.
I mean if you could find Thundercats, I mean, because it was an inventory story. I don't think it was ever even drawn. It was like we sold the story. No, actually we didn't. We pitched Thundercats. We didn't sell Thundercats. We pitched
Oh,
Defenders of the Earth.
bummer. I was gonna
We
say, if
pitched
it's somewhere, let me tell you.
no. We pitched Defenders of the Earth, which was another one of those,
Oh yeah.
I would just love
cartoon
to hear
shows.
that story, actually.
Yeah. I mean, we pitched anything that we thought, we could get, and most of those were like the lower, they were the low rungs on the ladder, right? That nobody else really even wanted to work on, and so we would try to like find our way in, and that would help. I mean, Justice took friggin' forever, like trying to knock on Howard Mackey's door. Howard, can we pitch a story? And like, Howard was not receptive, and he finally grudgingly kind of gave us that in, and that was a total inventory story, and then that ultimately ran, which I think indirectly may have led to the Shadowline stuff. But no, I mean that's a tough thing. Working with somebody can be very
And in a creative
difficult,
endeavor
but
specifically, because a lot, like creativity is very subjective. It's very
yeah,
personal.
yeah. I mean, it was, but I
It's
mean,
literally your
it
own
was
brain language, kind of like a
totally,
dream. So
totally. No, I mean, it was a very on the objective side of things. It was a very rewarding learning experience. I learned a lot working with her on those things. I mean, the final story we worked on together was challenging, uh, but that's you find a good rhythm, and you pick up on, as you said, you each contribute your strengths, in different ways, and there's a value in being able to play off those things, with each other. There's less value monetarily because you're
you're
they're not
splitting it,
paying
yeah.
you. Yeah, they're not paying you as you're two writers. We'll pay you two things. You get one rate, and then you've got to split it up.
Ooh. That's probably a story in and of itself. I mean, not specifically you and Margaret, but I mean, if you're working with someone else who like you're not.
Yeah, Colin and Landing. That's Colin and Kelly. They talk about that a lot, actually. Yeah.
And you could ostensibly you could double the output, right? I mean, I think that I don't know for sure, but I think that Alan Grant and John Wagner, who wrote together, I think that I know they had a good relationship, but yeah, I think that they could sort of like double their output in a way, and then like kind of cross back with each other to kind of, like I always had that kind of impression. I never grilled them on it exactly. Like I don't, like me and Margaret would sit down and we would do the things, very directly together. But that's another way of partners working. Is
Gotta get in
where
the system. It's capitalism. I hear
right,
you.
but you could double your output, and then you could like cross check it, back, right? And then you could do twice as much work and be on twice as many projects, and then it's okay. Now you got more exposure, and then your money is equalized. We, especially when we started, like didn't know each other, well. We didn't know our creative rhythms, very well. So, there was a lot of like, well, what do you think? Well, what do you think? Back and forth. And, nobody was really, maybe somebody would come up with an idea away from the other, and then we come back and then test that out. But, or come up with a line and say, hey, I thought of this line for so-and-so, for Dr. Druid. And then, we'd okay it, but we would always cross-check stuff. And there wasn't any really going away and doing anything independently of the other.
Okay.
All right. Anything else for him, Lilith? Because
Not today.
I do have an idea for next episode. What Lilith was talking about, the back and forth between you and Margaret. I think next time maybe we should do Marvel Superheroes #1 from 1990. I was refreshing myself on this. Yes, it's him. It's Margaret writing a Hercules story.
Oh my God! I've got to
Ray's
find that.
gonna love that.
Yeah. So
what issue is that? I got to
Marvel
find
Superheroes. It says like spring special on the cover, so I don't know if they did it like quarterly or something. Maybe.
All right.
But I do have a request for Hellraiser in October. Just so
okay. I figured we'd do something like that in October. Yeah. There's kind of the cover right there. You'll see like Moon Knight's kind of in the middle there, and
all right. That's man. I barely remember that one.
I gotta go dig through the archives.
It's like another anthology book because it said we might have to do both of them because we'll do issue 1 next time, and then at some point we'll have to do issue 2 because I think you have another story in issue 2, but it's you, Margaret, and another writer.
Really?
It's credited. Yeah, I don't know. So
not Alan Smithy. He wasn't working at that time.
No, I think he was.
I think he was still in the Bahamas then.
There might have been a story that somebody plotted, and maybe we had a script. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
We'll have to find it.
Yeah, but next time we'll do the #1. So,
all right, Hercules is fun. He's a fun character. Yeah, and we can pick a bunch of stuff for Hellraiser. Lilith, that would be a perfect perfect thing to play out. So,
it's some of my favorite stuff by you, honestly. I like Hellraiser universe though, and I thought you really, and that and your Slider stuff, I feel like you really were like a fan, and you had like a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into that stuff. So.
Oh yeah. Oh no. I mean, I definitely, it was definitely, again, very formative, good stuff to work on. All right. So, but next time it's Hercules. So I will get my my sandals and my my lion cloak out of the closet for that one.
All right. Before you go, any plugs? Anything you want to?
No,
promote?
everything got shut down. My appearances got waylaid. So there was no San Jose Galaxy Con, and Dragon Con was going to be next week, and I had to cancel that as well. So no plugs at the moment. Just be back here in a month for Hercules.
Substack or whatever.
Nah, I got to get back on that. As I say every time, and somebody shamed me, so I'm gonna do that this afternoon actually. So this is my challenge to myself.
All right. Well, once again, thank you for
guys. Yeah, this is fun. This was a good revisit with a good doctor.
Yes. And next time we'll do some Hercules. All right. Thank you so much.
All right, guys. Enjoy your Saturday and enjoy your weekend. Take care.
Will do.
Bye.
All right. So yes, we're not letting you people go yet because we're gonna do our plugs. He may not want to, but we're doing our plugs. Damn it.
Phil can't help himself. It's very compulsory.
Please, I found out I gotta keep you rolling in the dough since you're gonna live to be 106. Check out Ultimate Spider Cast 291 for that conversation. All right, kids. So send us your thoughts on this, on upcoming stuff. If you have a suggestion, what do you want to hear Mr. Chichester talk about? Email us CapesandLunatics@gmail.com or call the voicemail 614-382-2737. That's 614-38-CAPES. And again, any questions, he's happy to answer them. He answers our stupid questions.
Exactly.
All right. And you can always find everything Capes and Lunatics episodes, social media, merchandise. Get brand new Capes and Lunatics merch, the classic merch. We have a Cash App link for you to rain random money on us if you're feeling extra generous.
Make it rain.
And our Patreon, where you get exclusive episodes just for the patrons, completely uncensored. Again, sometimes we might have a year-long theme. Sometimes we just do some one and done. So you never know what you're going to get. So find that at patreon.com and find everything at tubespace.ao/CapesandLunatics Podcast Network. tubespace.ao/CapesandLunatics Podcast Network. All right, Lilith.
You can just find me on TikTok. At
to
Lilith Hellfire 69. It's fine.
Talk Hellraiser with Hellfire.
Exactly. Hellfire on Hellraiser. There we go.
Exactly. All right, kids. So yes, come back in a month and we'll talk that Marvel Superheroes #1 and his Hercules, his and Margaret's Hercules story. So, all right, catch you later.